Welcome back to Transformation Talks.
Yes, welcome back.
Think of this as your after the Amen deep dive into the source material from Transformation Ministries.
Exactly. It's where we really unpack the layers.
Right. And today we're immersing ourselves in a truly powerful sermon from Transformation Ministries' own speaker, Pastor Jeffrey West.
It's an incredible message.
It really is. The title is What Do You See? And it essentially challenges how you interpret the reality that's playing out right in front of you.
Which is such a universal struggle, for all of us.
Yeah, definitely. But to really capture the weight of this message, we actually have to look at how the service began, because the prologue here is just as crucial as the sermon itself.
Oh, absolutely. Mother Joyce Burford opened with this women's history moment that just completely set the tone.
It was such a great thematic anchor. She delivered this amazing tribute to Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Right, and it wasn't just, a dry list of accomplishments.
Right.
The presentation painted this vivid picture of someone who has seen the American justice system from basically every possible angle.
Yeah. We start right at her roots. Born in D.C., raised in Miami. And her name, Ketanji Onika, is actually a West African phrase.
Meaning, lovely one.
Exactly. And from there, the source outlines this trajectory of just intense preparation. She graduated magna cum laude from Harvard University and then cum laude from Harvard Law.
But the really fascinating part isn't just the academic pedigree.
No.
It's the sheer scope of her practical experience. She even worked as a reporter and researcher for Time magazine early on.
Oh, yeah, that's a great detail. And then we look at her legal career, which is where things get really dynamic. We're talking about someone who spent significant time as a federal public defender.
Which means she was directly representing low-income clients.
Right, standing next to people who are often at the absolute lowest points in their lives. And she also served on the U.S. Sentencing Commission.
Doing that really difficult systemic work to reduce sentencing disparities, specifically for drug offenses.
Yeah, and that creates such a sharp contrast when you look at the rest of her career. She goes from defending the most vulnerable to eventually interpreting the highest laws of the land.
She is actually the only current justice to have clerked at all three levels of the federal judiciary.
Including clerking for the man she eventually replaced, Stephen Breyer.
Exactly. And her judicial appointments by Presidents Obama and Biden are just extensive. During her time on the federal bench, she issued over 500 opinions.
And the source material highlights one from 2019 regarding executive immunity, where she firmly stated that presidents are not kings.
A very clear, very definitive statement. And of course, on June 30th, 2022, she made history as the first Black woman and the first former federal public defender on the Supreme Court.
So she has spent her entire career interpreting and upholding the laws of society, which perfectly begs the question Pastor West asks next.
Right, the pivot.
Yeah. What happens when the legal systems designed by man conflict with a higher moral truth? How does a tribute to a judge connect to a spiritual message about our personal vision?
Pastor West used her story to draw this really sharp line between legal authority and moral authority.
He was very grateful for having principled people in the legal system, right? People willing to take a stand.
Yes, he expressed deep gratitude for that. But he also challenged the congregation to remember that human systems are inherently flawed. Just because something is legal by man's law doesn't mean it is right in God's eyes.
That's a huge distinction.
It is. Society draws lines, but the divine standard operates on a completely separate, much higher plane.
Which is the perfect launch pad for his core thesis. If society's perspective is flawed, how much can we really trust our own perspective?
That's the real question, isn't it?
It is. He brings up that classic analogy of the glass half full versus half empty. And we've all heard that a million times, but I really want to dig into the psychology of it today.
Let's do it.
Is there a tangible difference in how our brains process reality depending on which way we view that glass?
There is a massive cognitive difference. When you look at a glass and perceive it as half empty, your brain is actively searching for the void.
You're fixating on what's missing.
Exactly. You are focusing on what is lost or withheld from you. And psychologically, this breeds a very specific negative tone. If you perpetually train your brain to spot the deficit, you constantly feel shortchanged.
While viewing it as half full trains you to focus on abundance.
Right. It's about acknowledging what is still there. But Pastor West is very clear that this isn't about delusion.
Right. He's not advocating for toxic positivity here.
Not at all. Acknowledging the glass is half full still requires acknowledging the missing water. It's just about which part of reality you let dictate your attitude.
So to explain how we develop this lens, he outlines 4 foundational pillars of perspective. The first one is experience.
Yes, the things we go through. He anchors this in the biblical concept that going through tribulations actually builds patience.
And that patience eventually forges hope.
Precisely. You learn that a trial isn't the end of the world because you have survived them before. Your experience rewires your perspective.
Then the second pillar is beliefs. What you hold to be fundamentally true. This feels a lot like confirmation bias.
It really does. If you believe the world is hostile, you will filter out the good and only see the hostility.
Your belief dictates your vision. Now, the third pillar he mentioned might be the most volatile, and that is emotions.
Oh, definitely. Pastor West gave a great, really relatable scenario for this.
The job scenario.
Yes. He said, imagine you are the primary breadwinner for your family. You go to work, your boss makes you incredibly angry, and in a fit of pure emotion, you impulsively quit on the spot.
You just walk out. The anger completely hijacks your brain.
Exactly. In that split second, your perspective shrinks down to the size of your anger. You lose sight of your mortgage, your family's stability, everything.
You let a fleeting feeling control a major long-term reality.
Which is exactly why the fourth pillar is so critical.
Knowledge. Knowledge is the counterbalance.
Right. It's understanding the full picture before you act. Gathering the facts so your emotions or past experiences don't just force a reckless reaction.
To really drive home what happens when these 4 pillars are put to the ultimate test, the sermon takes us to a brilliant case study from the book of Numbers, chapter 13.
This is such a powerful narrative.
It really is. Set the stage for us. The Israelites are at the edge of the promised land, right?
Yes. They have survived the wilderness, and God tells Moses to send 12 rulers, 12 leaders, to spy on the land of Canaan.
They are running reconnaissance.
Exactly. And the evidence of the promise they found was just staggering.
It's the classic land flowing with milk and honey. But the specific detail the source material highlights is almost hard to wrap your head around.
The grapes.
The giant grapes.
Right. They cut down a single branch with one cluster of grapes. And it was so massive that it took 2 grown men to carry it on a stick suspended between them.
That is irrefutable physical proof of abundance. You have 12 leaders staring at these giant grapes. But this brings us to the turning point.
The great pivot.
Right. 10 of those spies deliver their report, they confirm the fruit is amazing, and then they drop the word, nevertheless.
And that one word completely invalidates all the evidence they just saw.
It's tragic.
It is. The 10 spies brought back what the text calls an evil report. Despite the fruit, they focused entirely on the walled cities and the giants.
The children of Anak, the Amalekites.
Exactly, the obstacles.
Pastor West coined a phrase for this that is so incredibly evocative. He called it the grasshopper mentality.
The grasshopper mentality. It's a profound psychological trap.
It sounds just like modern imposter syndrome to me.
That's a great comparison. The spies looked at the giants and they literally said, we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight.
They didn't even ask the giants what they thought.
No. They saw themselves as insects first. Because of their own deep insecurity, they projected that identity onto the giants.
They let their circumstances completely shrink their perspective of themselves.
And by extension, they shrank their perspective of what God could do.
But not all of them did. Caleb and Joshua had a completely different reaction.
The dissenters.
Right. Caleb actually has to still the panicking crowd. He demands that they go up at once and possess the land.
Because his perspective was anchored in knowledge and belief, not emotion.
Exactly. Pastor West made such a great point here. If God promised it, it doesn't matter who currently possesses the land.
The current occupants are irrelevant.
Right. The giant is already defeated in the spiritual realm. You just have to walk it out in the physical.
But the cost of lingering in that doubt is just devastating.
Because the people listened to the 10 spies, not Caleb and Joshua.
Right. Because they let that negative perspective linger. Instead of moving in faith, an entire generation wandered for 40 years.
40 years in the wilderness.
Just missing their season entirely. All because they chose to see themselves as grasshoppers.
Taking this out of ancient history and bringing it right into our modern lives, Pastor West shared a personal anecdote that makes this so relatable.
His time in the military.
Yes. He talked about growing up relatively short in a family full of fighters, and to survive, he developed this preemptive strike mentality.
Always ready to fight.
Always. But he was terrified of going to jail because his mother explicitly warned him she would never bail him out.
That's a lot of tension to carry around.
So how does he go from this aggressive, hyper-defensive posture to where he is now?
This shift in vision happened when he got saved. He explained how his spiritual awakening completely dismantled that aggressive perspective.
He stopped fighting.
He stopped fighting and started witnessing. Instead of worrying about getting promoted over the next guy or trying to run the fastest 2 miles, he just focused on helping souls.
And the irony is that this peaceful perspective brought him exactly what everyone else was stressing over.
It really did. This service-oriented perspective naturally led to excellence. He started getting promoted. He got cars. He got houses.
It got to the point where senior officers were approaching him to ask what his secret was.
Because they could see the tangible results of a transformed perspective.
And it isn't just a story from his past. He brought up real-time examples from the congregation during the service.
The community triumphs. Those were beautiful moments.
Let's talk about Mr. Will, affectionately known as the Godfather.
Right. Mr. Will usually plays instruments to support a young lady in the church, but his hand was severely swollen with gout.
Gout is incredibly painful. He had every reason to stay home, to let his experience and emotions dictate a negative perspective for the day.
But he didn't. He showed up early anyway.
Because he realized his presence was just as important as his playing. He didn't let the inability to play stop him from supporting her.
And then there was Brother Sinclair.
Brother Sinclair had recently been hospitalized.
Which can easily leave someone feeling fragile. But Pastor West pointed out that Brother Sinclair showed up to church looking like new money.
He had a whole new lease on life. He completely refused to let a medical giant dictate his outlook.
Both men chose to view their situations through a lens of hope and faith.
Which perfectly sets up the final major theme of this deep dive. We've talked about facing giants and navigating sickness, but what happens when you are staring at a completely dead situation?
That brings us to Ezekiel 37, the Valley of Dry Bones.
The exiled Israelites are in a place of total despair. Their perspective is entirely negative. They declare their bones are dry and their hope is lost.
They're looking at a graveyard.
But God's viewpoint is the exact opposite. Where they saw a graveyard, God saw a place of revival.
He saw a great army.
Yes, and the call to action here is so specific. God didn't tell Ezekiel to physically go down and start assembling the bones together.
No, he didn't say, go organize this mess.
He told him to prophesy to them, to speak life.
And this is a crucial theological point from the sermon. You can have the most perfectly organized structure in the world. But without the Spirit, without the breath or wind of God, it is just a dead organization.
The structure isn't enough.
Right. The Spirit is what brings purpose, illumination, and vibrant life. You have to speak the Spirit into the situation.
Pastor West summed this up with a quote that is just unforgettable. He said, "You cut me, I'm bleeding. That's reality. But my faith say I'm healed. That's reality too."
It perfectly captures the tension between faith and reality. Having faith doesn't mean you deny the physical facts. The bleeding is real. The giants are real.
But the spiritual reality supersedes the physical facts.
Exactly.
We have covered so much incredible ground today, from the Supreme Court all the way to the Valley of Dry Bones. I want to ask you, the listener, to really examine your own life this week.
It's time for an audit.
Are you operating with a grasshopper mentality in your career or your relationships? What dead, dry bone situations do you need to stop complaining about and start actively prophesying life over?
And to add one final provocative thought to that, think about a walled city or a giant in your life right now.
The big obstacle.
Right. What if that obstacle isn't a sign that you should turn back? What if it is simply the necessary friction required to build your faith before you step into your promised land?
That reframes the entire struggle.
It really does. You have to remember that a grasshopper mentality isn't just internal, it's contagious. The 10 spies infected the whole camp.
So your perspective doesn't just impact you, it impacts everyone around you. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive today. If this conversation challenged your perspective, please make sure to like and subscribe to the show.
We'd love to have you keep exploring these topics with us.
Absolutely. Furthermore, we enthusiastically invite you to join the community live on the Transformation Ministries VB YouTube channel or their Facebook page every Sunday at 10:00 a.m.
It's always an amazing time.
It is. And finally, remember that you can watch replays of this entire powerful sermon on the Transformation Ministries YouTube channel. Stop seeing yourself as a grasshopper, speak life to your dry bones, and we will see you next time.